All right, welcome back, Dr. Zaarour from NC State Professor of Political Science. And definitely, he has become famous also globally. Dr. Zaarour told me that he has been invited by many global television and the news channels, and we will talk about it. But the first thing is that definitely we want to talk about the current situation in the Middle East, Iran and the U.S. conflict. And the situation is that the negotiation that was going on in Pakistan have failed. Basically, both countries have issued the statement that the goal that they were looking for were not achieved. So, what do you think? What is the next step?
Well, good afternoon, Dr. Nadeem, and thank you for having me again. It's always a pleasure. Of course, the negotiations that started late Friday, Saturday morning, Pakistan time, they were very sensitive, extremely important. I think there was a rush to negotiate a deal under certain circumstances, like after the war, cessation of hostilities for a few days. I don't think a couple days is sufficient to really establish a framework that's sustainable that could potentially lead to peaceful resolution. I think the White House wants a quick victory. That's not going to happen in 21 hours of negotiations. Even though the negotiations started very successfully, warmly, both sides for the first time in 47, 48 years have met face to face thanks to the facilitation of the Prime Minister of Pakistan. But I think there was a lot of pressure to produce quick results. That was not going to happen. We don't really know the exact. We could have speculations, of course, on whether or why the negotiations have stalled or failed. We don't know. It's too early at this point. But the President of the United States is the only person now that could restart these negotiations and take the next step or make a final decision. At this time, it's too early, premature to really speculate more than what we already know.
Together on Lantern Street, they share stories about kindness, patience, gratitude, and growing just a little better every day. This is Siman Studio TV, where every family has room for one more friend, and these are the stories from Lantern Street.
Yeah, it is one very interesting note that I made, and a lot of people also, that the actual culprit who started all this, that country name does not even come up anywhere, either in negotiation or in news media or in any other context, which is we know that Israel. It is a blue-eyed child. What's going on here?
Well, I think the Prime Minister of Israel has always torpedoed any plans. In fact, the two or three Pakistani diplomats that were negotiating secretly in Iran, which led to the cessation of hostilities and gave two-week kind of a cessation of hostilities to start or give peace resolution a chance. They tried to assassinate them, unfortunately, but they were not successful. In fact, the Iranians, the only way they agreed to participate in negotiations in the first place was the Pakistanis kind of protected the Iranian diplomats and escorted them with F-15s, F-16s to Pakistan to start the peace talks. So we've seen this. The Israelis have done that before, like last May or June, where they bombed Qatar. We talked about it on your show last year, how the Prime Minister of Israel does not want to see a peaceful Middle East because dragging the Gulf states into the war will help him to continue running the show. That game is kind of over now. I think President Trump has realized that to negotiate any peace with Iran or anybody else, you have to marginalize the Israeli prime minister. And that's what indeed happened, which led to this kind of 2-day peaceful or 21-hour negotiations.
Yeah. So, what is the next step? War is going to happen, or some other negotiation points are going to be pushed by global powers? What do you think?
Yeah, this time is certainly more critical because neither side wants to go to war. We have too much at stake. Iran has a lot in stake. The US has a lot. I mean, President Trump has raised the bar so much, he expects results. But to have a quick victory or quick results, that's not likely to happen. I think the Iranians, since the negotiations stalled last night, early this morning, they jump on the phone. They're talking to the Chinese. They're talking to the Iranian, to the Russians. In fact, President Putin has already released a statement, hoping that the talks will restart soon. And this is very sensitive time. I think we're not going to see war, but we have seen President Trump, uh, taken a decision to stop the flow of traffic going through the Strait of Hormuz. Already have made that statement. So now the strait has already been somewhat closed, and now more adamant response from the White
Right,
House.
right,
We're going
right.
to close it down to stop shipping.
Yeah,
And again, that's counterproductive. That's counterproductive.
yeah, but we know that our president does not take the no as an answer, and he keeps pushing and get his own way. So is he or the USA will go and muster the um, occupy the basically Strait of Hormuz as a result of the failed negotiation? Because I think everything boiled down to opening the Hormuz, which was already open before the war. Now, nobody realized at that time that this will be an economical impact which will not be bearable by any state which is running on energy. If energy is stopped, everything is going to stop, and of course, the regular people will pay for it. So you think I heard that the United States already have moved into Hormuz and is planning to take over. Is that, do you have any information on that?
Yeah, the ships already have been instructed, the American ships have been instructed to blockade at least some of the islands and the Strait of Hormuz. If that's to happen, certainly the American people are feeling the pinch, feeling the prices. I mean, I myself, I used to fill up my gas tank in $34. Now it's $56. And of
Yes.
course, millions of Americans are feeling that. This is April. Next month is May. We have a lot of graduations. Summer season is upon
A lot
us.
of travel, yes.
People will travel, and that will feed it. So the public pressure will only mount against the White House to go ahead and make a decision. And I think a problem that the U.S., the Trump administration faces, they have to lower the expectations a little bit. They don't expect Iran to raise the right flag, to admit defeat and surrender. That's not likely to happen. I mean, they've been training for this for generations. I think the White House still has a lot of potential that could end this impasse. Certainly, the Iranians will have to be somewhat more flexible. We need a little push from friends and allies in the region. I mean, Pakistan has served a great role. I think Turkey has a role to play. China is suffering a lot economically, and they need to see this conflict ends peacefully. Russia is the next player that is invited by the Arabian Gulf countries to play a role, and Russia is able and most likely willing to do that once that Russian-Ukrainian war comes to a peaceful resolution. We got to see more emboldened Russia.
Yeah, but we know that the Russia was involved actually in Ukraine to to do all these things, what is happening right in the world. I think it was a long-term plan.
Mm,
I mean, I can speculate it. I don't know exactly because I don't have any reach to those quarters
mm,
where the decisions are made. And it was, and my next question was actually that who is on which side? We don't know because on one side, UK Kramer said that it's not going to cooperate with the USA, but on the other side, he's saying that he's collecting 30 nations to open the Hormuz.
mm.
So confusion is there. People are changing sides on an hourly basis, particularly people in the region, the countries in the region, for example, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia and the Middle East countries. They have saying one thing, and then after 1 hour they are saying something else. So definitely, there is no plan really. It looks like, except the plan which is already laid down by what we call West. What is that plan?
Well, actually, talking about the allies, the United States, the only ally it has anywhere now is actually Israel. That's the only ally either side has. The Europeans are staying out of it. They have their own interests, and those interests among the allies and friends and the other side, China, Russia, of course, Iran, they have conflicting interests, and the interests are short-term and long-term interests. I think China is looking toward the long-term interest, so is Russia. The US is only looking at November 2026, where we have midterm elections. I think the US after 2028, we're gonna have a new president, and new president will have his own strategy for the region. So the conflicts are there. Even if we have Iran sign a new nuclear deal limiting their nuclear technology, the next president may have a different point of view. So this is kind of a state-to-state agreement and not a treaty where the
Mhm,
U.S.
mhm,
Congress is involved. So a lot of conflicting interest, and there is a short-sighted view and a long-term view. China, I think, has the long-term stability, economic view versus the U.S. has limited security view. And a security which, when we emphasize security too much under the school of realism, we're gonna feel less secure because when we emphasize too much security, if it doesn't lead to peaceful resolution, then the armament and the tools that you have to engage diplomatically becomes useless.
yeah. But don't you think that China is the one who's gonna be the most a loser if Iran is destroyed? Because they already lost the energy oil from Venezuela, and now they are buying oil from Iran, although Iran is still under sanction. So if Iran goes away or taken away, or a regime is installed over there, which is not favorable to China, China will be the biggest loser. So are Chinese thinking about it? Definitely they are. What is their role currently? They don't want the Iran to go away or the current regime to go away. So where China stand at this point?
Yeah, great question. China has a lot to lose and also has a lot to gain. We have seen China flexing their muscles a little bit, becoming more engaged behind closed doors. Actually, they were the ones that pushed the Iranians to agree to a ceasefire. Was
Mhm,
China that playing behind the curtain, if you will, trying to be as diplomatic as possible without appearing pro-Iran. They do have oil deals with Iran for 50 years. So they don't want to see that going away. They need lots of energy if they are going to sustain their economy, growing 4 or 5% a year. They don't want to lose that advantage. They have a lot to lose. They also have a lot to gain. So China has a lot at stake. And they want to make sure that their interests are protected. They are working with the Russians, they're working with the Saudis, they're working with Turkey. So the Chinese are effective and efficient behind closed doors, and they want to see this ends. I think they may offer some incentives to Iran, possibly in the future, economic investments, possibly, because that Silk Road or Chinese economic road will run through Iran. Or the Gulf states. So simply China it will become the power broker in this case. I think as the U.S. isolating itself without a clear vision, without a clear direction for the U.S. foreign policy, with China is going to play that role with the Russian support.
mhm, mhm. Let's talk about the other side of the world. Um, the media and the general politicians in USA and the West. Nobody's talking about Gaza and Lebanon. Lebanon is being destroyed by Israel, illegal war. And I heard that someone told me that if you look at the Google map today, you will see that lot of villages in the southern Lebanon don't even show up over there. It's blank land. You think the Google is working with Israel to do that?
Well, well, it's actually true. This is not the first time the Israeli military has razed to the ground many villages on the border. They want to create kind of an economic zone or a security zone or buffer zone, they call it, for Israel. So they have displaced over 1.2 million people in the last couple of months alone. So yeah, I think Google probably collaborating, I'm sure, because sometimes Google mentions Palestine, then it doesn't mention Palestine anymore, mentions only Israel. So I'm sure there is some sort of collaboration. Those villages in southern Lebanon, again, they've been bombed since 1968, 68, 69. So a lot of them have been forced to leave southern Lebanon to go into the Beirut suburbs, which made Beirut a much bigger city. So I think people in the West are ignoring the fact that the ethnic cleansing did not end in Gaza, did not stop in Gaza, but now has been exported to Lebanon. And the bombing on Wednesday in Lebanon, civilian population, that was intentional by the Israeli leadership because the president of the United States made a secret deal to meet with the Iranians, keeping Netanyahu out of the loop and to retaliate to show that I still exist. Netanyahu bombed Lebanon, killing over 500 people, injuring 1,400 people. The threats continuous. The threats have been always there against Lebanon, and Lebanon cannot defend itself against Israeli aggression.
But there is no official statement from the USA about what Israel is doing. So I think there is a agreement between that okay, keep doing it. And this is my next question is that is what we call the West policy is that let Israel do all the destruction, take over the world, so that they will ultimately dominate because the West think that they have the power in terms of political power, the land power, economical power, and the military power to rule the world, and they are letting Israel to do all the dirty work to destroy the civilization in those areas ultimately and taking over. So it's a
Uh,
kind of crusade still going on.
there is well, they call it a crusade, so they're not admitting, they're not denying that it's a fact. The European power, especially the British, helped create the state of Israel. With their support, there will be no state of Israel. Unfortunately, the United States came as a new player, did not understand the dynamics. They look at it from a religious perspective, from a kind of a holy war perspective, biblical perspective, and not that geostrategic perspective. And I think the United States has kind of giving its influence to the Israelis in the Middle East. So any policies in the Middle East is really influenced and created, drafted by Tel Aviv, unfortunately. So with the rise of Mr. Trump, we have seen the eclipse. That word is kind of funny word. Eclipse of the European powers has been taken over by the United States. So the
So
Europeans have no power. They're divided, and they're worried about Russian incursion into Europe, and they're not worried about Palestine as much. There is a movement, Spain, Ireland, Slovenia, against Israeli atrocities, but the power brokers remain in Washington.
so you're telling me that the West is going to gain everything if Israel becomes a greater Israel?
We have a division in Europe. We have divisive governments in Europe. We have seen a disconnect between the governments and the population. We have a rising anti-Israel population and governments that have been hijacked by Zionist groups. And they have to kind of cave in to Zionist demands as governments. But the population, with elections coming up in Europe and most countries in Europe, like next couple of years, you're going to see a major replacement of these leaders. We're going to see new faces that greater Israel will not be created because the demand for Palestinian state has kind of we have 153 countries at the UN demanding the state of Israel, the state of Palestine being created. In fact, Russia, excuse me, Spain, France and Mexico already welcomed the new Palestinian ambassadors, recognizing Palestine as a state. We cannot undo that. Israel cannot undo the recognition of Palestinian state. So creating a better, bigger Israel or greater Israel is not going to happen,
But if
especially
there is no land, but if there is no land that we can call Palestine, that has no value, in my opinion, no
is
matter how many resolutions are passed, because we have seen that UN resolution really doesn't matter to the powerful nations in the world, and they do it whatever they think is the right thing for themselves, not for the other countries or so basically nobody is willing to shake hands and do a fair trade. It's basically that my thing is my thing and your thing is also my thing. And this thing will always create wars and conflict, and people will suffer. So, is there any effort going on in this direction that, hey, come on, man, think about shaking hand and talk to each other and do the fair trade? Whoever, it's a global thing, you know. The resources are global resources. Some area might have something, and other area might have something. We have to put all them together for the benefit of the humanity and for the earth as a sustainable earth. So, is there any really genuine effort to make that happen?
I think the international pressure is growing, demanding a Palestinian state, even though Washington still holds the reign of power globally. We are witnessing kind of a U.S. global recession politically. We have seen realignment in among countries. We have seen European unions getting closer to China, getting closer to Russia. They want to see the Russian-Ukrainian war end because Washington, they think, is an unreliable partner. So this realignment will hurt the Israeli economy, Israeli military. We have seen a lot of Israelis suffering economically, socially, they're not being accepted on a global level. So that will put a lot of pressure to create a Palestinian state. 153 countries already recognize the Palestinian state, and it's very difficult to undo that. There is less land, but we have 20% of Palestinians living in Israel who are citizens. We could find a formula if there is a willing leadership in Israel. Is the current right-wing groups in Israel that assassinated Rabin in 1995 that wanted to reach out to the Palestinians, create a Palestinian state? It was Baruch Goldstein, 1993, that went into Abraham Mosque in Al Khalil, Hebron, and killing 39 Palestinians. So this group of people who that are in power now, but they are not being recognized as a legitimate Israeli government. So I
Mhm.
think we are seeing a fragmentation in Israeli society. The next election in October or November in Israel, we're going to see a realignment. We're going to see people who are demanding some sort of a peace for a Palestinian. There is less land, but I think a formula could be worked out based on the peace for land, land for peace.
But
Uh,
if you look into 1300 years of Muslim ruler of various dynasty, the Palestine and the Jerusalem has always been an open city. There, I don't recall any major conflict going on between any of these three religions. This formula was gutted by the British when they took over in 1924, and since then, that area has become a highly flammable area, and all the conflict are actually coming from there. The other thing is that competition, which is the central point of capitalism, is also destroying the relationship between various kind of people in the world. Cooperation, I think, is the best way to go along. And cooperation requires you to shake hands and sit on the same table and eat together and resolve your issues instead of picking up the gun and start shooting. What are your opinion about these 2 points?
Yeah, well, I mean, ethnic cleansing doesn't work. I mean, the Nazis tried it, it doesn't work. We have tried it in South Africa, it doesn't work. Eventually, ethnic cleansing has to come to an end, and you have to sit down on a negotiating table and reach an agreement. We haven't seen that. In the 1990s, we had an opportunity, but the Israeli right-wing politicians such as Netanyahu and Ben Gvir and Smotrich, those guys believe in greater Israel, believe in one state throughout the Middle East from the Nile to the Euphrates. That's not going to happen without creating a lot of chaos, a lot of destruction, and of course, ethnic cleansing. So, but the local folks who lived there for centuries always welcomed the Jewish population. We have Jews who came from Morocco and came from Iraq, want to go back to Iraq or Iraq. They believe there are local, there are Iraqis and Syrians and Yemenis. So one miscalculation I think the British did in 1917, 1918 is ending the Khilafah. The Khilafah was a stabilizing force, but they thought if we do away with the Khilafah, then we could be the masters of the world. Well, this was 1917, and the British Empire collapsed 1947. The 30 years, the British Empire collapsed, the French Empire collapsed. We have two rising empires after the Second World War, the US and the Soviet Union. So that miscalculation, now I think the British are
I
rethinking.
don't think so. It was a miscalculation. I think it was very well calculated of way of winning the Crusade War, basically.
Yeah,
And,
but I
and
didn't
and
think they
what
were
was happening is to occupation of that area.
right. But I didn't think they were thinking, oh, if we get rid of the Ottoman Empire, we will also lose in the end. And that's what indeed happened. That's the
Right, right,
miscalculation part
right.
that if they go down, eventually we gotta go down. But
After
then
the fall of Ottoman Empire, the Muslims are basically all over the world are suffering economically and politically, and also their lands are being grabbed by illegal authorities, what we
exactly.
call authorities, under UN watch,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
nobody is willing to
And
pay for it.
in violation of the UN Charter and UN resolution.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, do you think it is okay to remain within UN? All these
Mhm.
60 Muslim countries. There is a change, in my opinion, which is needed to get away, or modification is gonna help. And now there's a pact between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. Is Pakistan going to attack Iran or defend Iraq, Saudi Arabia in any which way?
Well, Pakistan is in a very unique position simply because they have the best ally China has in Asia is Pakistan. So this is very clear. The general, the military general, Pakistani military general, is has direct contact with the White House. So Pakistan is in a very unique position, which could play a role of a mediator and has done that successfully. In fact, Pakistan diffused a situation last week, which led to the peace talks. Even though it failed, and of course, J.D. Vance. I think will only bring the two
But
countries.
Pakistan has always been be used by particularly USA to mediate, and then they sanction Pakistan, and then they provide money to Pakistan, and then they sanction it again, and they call it a terrorist nation. And
Yes.
then whenever the time comes, they use Pakistan as a what you call it, the tennis table to ping pong between various players.
Yeah, they do this
Pakistan
not only
never
with
gain
Pakistan.
anything out of it because Pakistan is not going to come out of this
Yeah.
economical situation they put themselves in.
Yeah, I think the US does the same thing with Turkey. They want Turkey to be mediator, then they attack Turkey, who is a NATO member. They do the same thing. So yes, definitely. I don't think they can ignore Pakistan because Pakistan has 100, I don't know, 60 million people, nuclear power, a major Muslim country, democratic country. They have some sort of democracy according to the West perspective. The US cannot ignore Pakistan. They can
But
ignore.
unless Pakistani people themselves become prosperous and economically stable, that country will never be stabilized, no matter how many atom bombs they have, no matter how many generals they have, no many how
Right.
many field marshals they have.
Yeah,
Nothing
I
is going to
think.
change because in the last almost 80 years, poverty has killed the economical development of Pakistan, and if the country is not strong within the country itself, and its people are not happy,
Yeah, I
nothing is
think
going to be achieved.
Pakistan now is moving toward Asia, moving toward Japan, moving toward China, moving toward
They always have a relationship with Japan.
yeah.
They always have good relationship
Yeah.
with Germany. They actually loan money to Germany
Hmm.
in 1950s and 60s.
One was the vibrant
But
economy.
it has all been destroyed because of the hegemony of some powerful generals in Pakistan because of the collaboration with the American
Hmm.
and working with American,
Hmm.
ignoring all the wishes of the
Yeah,
Pakistani
yeah.
people.
This is a we call it love-hate relationship. You need the Pakistani because they were the buffer between the Soviet Union and the Gulf states. So Pakistan played that role. It just depends who you have in the White House, and the country that stirs the trouble against Pakistan is certainly India. India has always done that, played that role, and with the other side, the Israelis always played the role to kind of prop up anti-Egyptian in the 50s and 60s, anti-Egyptian propaganda. So we have seen that on both sides. So I think this only makes sense where you have Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Turkey, and Egypt merging as a block of nations to protect the region.
Hopefully, if this happens, that will be great. We're gonna leave it right there. So again, thank you very much. Good to have you again back.
Yes,
I
sir.
think we're gonna do more of these on a regular basis, and hopefully, Global Newsline and also the Short Circuit. We're gonna do a streaming channel, and you may be able to lead on that. Hopefully, thank you really very much for your time and your insight into the current situation.
Thank
We
you.
will definitely talk again later.
Yes, sir.
Have a good
Thanks
day.
again. Thank you for the opportunity.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.